Let's talk about autistic strengths. Hey folks, welcome to the Autistic Adoptee channel. As the channel name suggests, I am both autistic and I am an adoptee. So in the autistic community, we often focus, I probably shouldn't speak for everyone. I'll speak for myself. I tend to focus on and talk about the hardships of navigating an allistic world with my autistic brain. So in this episode, we're going to flip that around a little bit. And instead, we are going to talk about autistic strengths. And I want you to remember that autistic people are not a monolith. We are not all the same. So if you yourself are autistic, or if you know somebody who is autistic, or if you love someone who is autistic, some of these things might resonate. All of these things might resonate. Or none of these things might resonate with you. These traits that I'm going to talk about, these strengths that I'm going to talk about, are just some of the things that I observe as being common traits within autistic folks, within many of us, I should say. So anyways, let's start by addressing the whole autism is a superpower statement, right? And you see that in memes, you see that on like clothes, t-shirts, sweatshirts, whatever. And I'm not trying to shame anybody, and I don't want to shame anyone who really resonates with that, who is using that statement that autism is a superpower. They're using it in a healthy way to help themselves develop a healthier view, healthier perspective, a healthier self-image. I'm not trying to shame anyone. I don't want to shame anyone. If you use that statement to better yourself, I fully 100% support that. From my point of view, I personally do not use it. I personally steer away from that statement because to me, it feels like if I say it, I'm glossing over the hardships, the struggle of trying to navigate a world that's not built for us, right? Not built for me, not built for autistic people. It's masking, in a way, the struggle, the difficulty. I think for me, it's healthier for me to say that as an autistic person, I bring certain strengths to the table. I contribute in a positive way through my strengths, and some of those strengths tend to be autistic traits, right? It's healthier for me to think of it as autistic strengths rather than autism as a superpower, if that makes sense. Okay, so what are these strengths that I am talking about? The first one is curiosity and deep thinking, right? Second one is that we are driven. We are often very driven people. The third is that we have a very strong sense of justice and fairness. The fourth is that we are very empathetic. And the fifth is that we tend to be very loyal. So let's start with curiosity and deep thinking. Autistic people tend to make great researchers, right? We tend to be great researchers, and not necessarily in that traditional peer-reviewed study and article type of way, although it certainly applies there as well. But we tend to be great researchers in that we can take a thread and we can start pulling on it. and delving deeper and pulling out all of these details and data and making sense of it. We're very good at learning. We have a love for learning. And perhaps because we are so curious and we have done that deep dive study and research into so many different things, we become, or we are naturally, very good at seeing connections. We can see how this thing that we studied is related to this other thing that we studied, which is related to this thing that we're studying now. We're very good at seeing the connections, at the threads that, or the common themes that run through everything, right? Because we see those connections so easily, we tend to love exploring possibilities. If I take this piece of this thing and this piece of that thing and I combine it, or if I take this approach that I learned while I was doing my research into this thing and I take this approach and I apply it to this thing over here, we love looking at possibilities and exploring possibilities. And as a result, we end up becoming skills collectors, what I like to call being a skill collector. We end up with an eclectic collection of skills, right? Like I have my undergraduate degree is in creative writing, comparative religions, literary studies, and then I studied psychology and I studied dance, right? I've also spent 25 plus years in the IT industry and became an expert on project management methodologies, particularly agile project management. I've studied martial arts my entire life. I am an expert level lock picker. I run a lock picking YouTube channel. I have a world record time for being able to pick a particular brand of lock. I'm a musician. We tend to just collect all of these skills, all of these eclectic little things that might not seem connected on the surface, but are connected in our minds, or we see the connections that other people don't see between them, or we draw connections between them, or we're just simply we're out there collecting skills because we find them interesting, because we are curious people and we are deep, deep thinkers, right? So that particular strength, coupled with the next strength, being driven, you can see how being a driven person combined with curiosity and deep thinking really emphasizes that great researcher thing, right? And it also helps with the other strengths that I listed, but we'll get to those later in the video. But because we're driven, we can sometimes lose ourselves in a task or an activity. Essentially, we can hyper focus. And if we're rested, well regulated, if we're healthy, that hyper focus can lead to amazing results at school, at work. It can lead to learning so many new things. It can lead to amazingly detailed analysis or creative solutions or innovative designs or beautiful art or beautiful performances or beautiful music, literature, what have you. That drive and that hyper focus combined with our curiosity and our deep thinking just really can have so many benefits, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us as well. Now, it might not seem entirely related to the first two, but the third idea, the third strength, that we have a strong sense of justice and fairness, which my wife, she calls it my overdeveloped sense of right and wrong, right? And this sense of justice, this sense of fairness, this sense of fair play might not always be 100% in line with societal or legal norms. But the sense of justice almost always stems from a very careful, logical analysis of the information that we have on hand. And I'm careful to stress that it's based on that is an analysis of the information that we have, because we might think that this thing here is righteous, it is just, right? Based on the information we have. And then we gain more information. We see how this thing impacts these people, impacts this situation, can lead to this other situation. And with that additional data, we can then adjust, because it is the result of a logical analysis. We can then say, oh, with the information I had, I thought it was just, I thought it was righteous, but it actually is not. This is actually not a just, fair thing at all. I just needed to dive deeper, right? We had to do that curiosity, deep thinking thing, that driven thing, and dive deeper into the subject to fully understand its ramifications. And once we have that information, now we see it for what it is, right? Now we see that this thing that we thought was one thing, just or righteous, and we see that it is not, or vice versa, right? And with this strong sense of justice and fairness, we can be incredibly dogged in our insistence for fairness, for equality, for justice. We can absolutely dig our teeth in and be stubborn. And part of that's because we have committed so much intellectual and emotional energy into researching it and understanding it and developing our point of view, developing our perspective on it, that when it is violated, it is like all of that work is being violated. All of that emotional energy and intellectual energy and time that we've devoted into developing this stance, right? Our perspective, our point of view. It's like that, all of that work, time, and effort is being attacked, not just this thing, right, that we're reacting to. So we can be incredibly stubborn and dogged in our insistence for fairness. And you can see how empathy, the fourth strength that I listed, how empathy plays a role in that sense of justice, how things affect other people, and being able to empathize with people in situations other than our own, and being able to see injustice in what they are experiencing, or seeing equity in what they are experiencing. Empathy is another one of our strengths. Or tends to be, to avoid absolute statements, tends to be another one of our strengths. I think it is entirely a misunderstanding, a misnomer, a mistaken thought to say that autistic folks don't have empathy, which is a very common misconception, right? And I think that's born out of the diagnostic criteria in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. But we have to keep in mind that the DSM and the diagnostic criteria is built from the quote-unquote deficit model. What are the deficits a person has that can lead to, or that it makes them diagnosable as having XYZ disorder, right? It is built on the deficit model as opposed to looking at things like strengths, right? So I think the misconception that we lack empathy, I think that's what it stems from. And in many cases, I truly believe, in most cases, I truly believe the opposite to be true. I think autistic people have a great depth of empathy. And part of this misunderstanding is, I think, tied directly to, or a great deal of this misunderstanding, in addition to being tied to the deficit model in the DSM, it's tied to the double empathy problem, which is, an entire video unto itself. But at a very high level, the double empathy problem is that just like autistic folks have trouble reading, interpreting, understanding the emotions of allistic people have that same trouble in the opposite direction. They have trouble reading, understanding, interpreting the emotions of autistic people. I don't know how many times the wrong emotion has been applied to me because the allistic person that I'm dealing with, reacting to, talking to, or whatever, is misinterpreting whatever signals I may or may not be giving. Like that is one of the most common occurrences in my life in social interactions. So it's not just that autistic people have a deficit in understanding the emotions of allistic people. Allistic people have a deficit in understanding the emotions of autistic people. So at a very high level, that's the double empathy problem, right? It goes both ways. It's not that autistic people have this massive deficit. It's that both sides have a deficit in being able to understand each other. But the thing about that is that just because our empathy might not look like an allistic person's, might not manifest in the same way that this person over here, their empathy manifests. Just because it doesn't manifest in the same way does not mean that we don't have it. Our empathy just doesn't look like yours. And that's okay, right? So coupled with this strong sense of justice and fairness, autistic people can be extremely supportive friends, colleagues, partners, lovers, family members, right? It is a strength. Our empathy is a strength, especially when coupled with our sense of justice and fairness. And then the fifth strength that I mentioned, loyalty, that also ties into these others, right? Loyalty, I'm not sure if this last one, if loyalty is an innate trait to autistic folks, or if it is born out of trauma. And you can give me your thoughts on where our sense of loyalty comes from down in the comments if you'd like. For whatever reason, autistic people are very, very selective of who we invite in, of who we choose to be our people, of who we choose to be close to us, right? And now, like I said, it could be born out of trauma, and we've been burned so many times that we become very picky about who we let in so that we're trying to protect ourselves and not be burned again. Or it could just be, an innate trait that's tied to, the fact that we find social interactions difficult and we don't want to spend all that energy on a social interaction with somebody who we don't consider close or we don't want to be close to us. Whatever the reason, whether it's an innate aspect of autism or if it's born out of trauma, we are very selective. We tend to be very selective, and we tend to have very few friends as a result. We'll have, if we're in a healthy situation, we'll have a few really close friends, but that huge wide circle of friends is not, necessarily something that we have or even want. Because we tend to be very picky about who we let in. If you have been picked, if an autistic person has picked you, let you in, brought you close, you can count on having a very devoted and loyal friend or partner or family member or colleague in that autistic person who actually chose you, right? And you remember our capacity for empathy and fairness, right? Combined with loyalty, this makes us truly great people to have in your life, right? So those are it's just a quick run through these 5 autistic strengths that's literally just barely scratching the surface of this topic. There are so many other strengths that can be enumerated, right? But I want you to keep in mind what I said at the beginning, that autistic people are not a monolith, and your mileage may vary with these strengths or finding these strengths in this person versus that person, right? Just like with allistic folks, there are some toxic, unhealthy allistic people. There are some toxic and unhealthy autistic people who might not bring these strengths to the table. Or they might be perfectly healthy, perfectly non-toxic, incredible, great people, and they might not manifest all these same strengths. But as a whole, my perspective, my belief is that these are 5 of the top. These are the top 5, in my opinion. At least it is. Sorry, I'm stumbling on words. I have competing thoughts going on in my brain. These are 5 of the more common traits, strengths that autistic people bring to every relationship, or bring to the world, or bring to the table, however you want to phrase it. Okay. Just like allistic people, autistic people, like I said, bring a lot to the table. So dismissing somebody out of hand because of difference, or because their strengths manifest differently, you are dismissing all of this goodness that we can bring to you, right? And just the littlest bit of understanding and tolerance for that difference. Autistic strengths manifest differently from allistic strengths. We understand that. We can tolerate the fact that they manifest differently. Just a little bit of understanding and tolerance of that difference can bring you a fantastic friend, colleague, employee, partner, family member, peer, what have you, right? And as autistic people, we can be proud of the fact that we do bring so many strengths to everything that we do. This list, like I said, only scratches the surface of this topic. So, let me know what other strengths you can think of. Let me know if any of these 5 resonate with you. And I truly appreciate you hanging out with me. Thanks, folks. Hey, folks. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, remember to drop a like and leave a comment or a question down below. If you're new here, subscribe and ring the notification bell for more content like this. Until the next video, keep living your best life and know that you deserve it.